I cried out because no one had ever made me feel that way before. Not even my husband, who thinks I'm ugly, ever made love to me in this manner, with his lips on my nipples and neck. He used his 2 fingers to shake the mouth of my peepee, and then gently slipped the 2 fingers inside my wet peepee. Warm, sluggish, and ravenous, my shirt had already fallen off my shoulder, and his hands were following every inch of me, like I were a picture that he was trying desperately to commit to memory. All I could think about was what it would be like to be wanted once more, not shame or promises. It was not just sex. It was a release from years of silence and being invisible in my own home. I moaned that night in the back seat of his car, parked under the soft glow of a street lamp, and for the first time in my life, someone heard me. My thighs trembled as he kissed the inside of my knee, moving higher. I could feel his breath heavy and full of restraint until even that restraint cracked. He lifted me onto his lap, our clothes half on, half off. I was being held, and as I let my body melt in his arms, he uttered the words that broke me again. To my incredible subscribers, thank you from the bottom of my heart for always tuning in. My name is Jessica. I'm 42 years old, and I've been married to my husband Eric for almost 16 years. We met in college, and he was tall, charming, and had a calm voice that made you feel like the world wasn't so bad. I fell in love with him quickly, and 2 years after graduating he stopped. Our daughter needed to be picked up one night after I tried to initiate something in bed, and he rolled away. I asked him if he was okay. His answer changed everything. He sat up, rubbed his face, and said, "Jessica, I do not know how to say this without sounding cruel. I am not attracted to you anymore." I felt like he punched the air out of my chest. I could not breathe. I remember getting out of the bed and walking into the bathroom just so he would not see me break. I cried silently with the water running, staring at myself in the mirror. I was not ugly. I was not perfect either. I had gained some weight after my second miscarriage. Life happened, but I was still the woman who gave him everything, and in one sentence he told me I was nothing to him anymore. After that night I started going to the gym, not for him, but for me. I needed to feel like I still existed. I needed to do something that reminded me I had power over my own life. That was when I met Daniel. He was not loud or cocky like the other trainers. He was kind, gentle, a few years younger than me. He was of mixed race, had deep brown eyes, and a strong body that moved with quiet confidence. At first, he only gave me small tips when I was depressed. When I laughed at something he said, he stared at me for too long and said, "Smile. Wow, you need to wear that more often." Soon, our sessions evolved into coffee dates, long walks after gym hours, and texting. Then, one night in his car, I'll admit that I was terrified, and my hands were shaking the whole time. But when he leaned in and kissed me, I kissed him back, with all the pain I had been burying. In that moment, I wasn't Eric's wife. I was Jessica, a woman who wanted to feel wanted, but everything has a price. The next morning I sat at the kitchen table watching Eric sip his coffee and scrolled through his phone like nothing was wrong. I wondered if he knew, if he could smell Daniel on my skin, but no, he was numb. He did not care. Still, something shifted in me that night. With Daniel had awakened something, not just desire, but questions. Was I really ready to destroy my marriage, or had Eric already destroyed it the night he said those words? As I sat in silence across from my husband, I had no idea that he had already begun noticing, that he had already contacted someone to follow me. As a private investigator, I would not know until later, but Eric was watching, and what he saw would bring everything crashing down. The morning I found out Eric had hired someone to follow me, I was sitting on the couch folding laundry when he walked in, held up his phone and said, "So this is where you go after your gym sessions?" His voice was calm, the kind of calm that comes before a storm. I froze, still holding one of our daughter's little shirts. He turned the phone toward me, a photo clear as day, me. We were outside his apartment door when Daniel put his hand on the small of my back. I was grinning, but my throat tightened. Eric put the phone on the coffee table and sat down across from me. He didn't yell or ask questions. Instead, he just stared at me, as if I were a stranger who had just entered his home. I felt vulnerable, as if every private moment and secret thought I had with Daniel had just been taken away from me and thrown on the table. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I was more shocked by that inquiry than by his charge, and I shook my head, saying, "No, it's not like that. I didn't mean to," and he held up a hand to silence me. I know that I said those words to hurt you, but this is betrayal." And he was right. As painful as it was to hear, I crossed a line that would never be erased, and I expected him to walk out or scream. But instead he got up, grabbed his keys, and left. He didn't return home that night or the next, and I sat at the kitchen counter, with a glass of wine in my guilt, replaying every moment that had led to this. What shocked me most though, 3 days later he came back. I was standing in the hallway when he walked in. No suitcase, no drama, just silence. He looked tired, his eyes were puffy like he had not slept. "I saw the pictures, I saw the texts," he said quietly, "but I also saw the way you looked at him, and it made me realize how long it has been since you looked at me like that." I stared at him, heart pounding. "You were right to feel unwanted." He said, "I stopped trying. I let life eat us alive. I never expected an apology, not from Eric." But there he was, owning his part in our destruction. He walked closer. "If there is anything left, anything worth saving, then I want us to try." I stood frozen, unsure if this was real. Part of me wanted to fall into his arms and sob. Another part wanted to scream at him for waking up now. "After all this damage, what about Daniel?" I asked. Eric's jaw tightened. "He is not part of this. I do not want to know about what happened between you two. I only want to know if you are willing to let him go." I looked down, lips trembling. The truth was, Daniel had given me something I had not felt in years. Attention, affirmation, and desire. But love, no. What I needed was my family, my life, and my marriage, and I wanted to fight for it. "Yes," I whispered, "I can let him go." In the following week, we began therapy, which was uncomfortable and brutal, and even required us to peel back years of disappointment and resentment like rotten layers of skin. In one session, I told the therapist I felt like a ghost in my own home, like I was just a mother and a maid, not a wife. Eric nodded slowly, his eyes burning with emotion. "I thought I was doing everything right by working hard, paying my bills, and being there for our daughter, but I never realized how empty I made our marriage feel. It wasn't easy. There were nights when we slept back-to-back mornings and we hardly spoke. But then there were tiny, delicate moments when his hand would reach for mine under the table, or I would catch him watching me while I cooked, and he began to compliment and touch me once more. One night, as I was folding laundry, he came over, took a shirt from my hands, and said, "You are beautiful." My story was with Eric, and slowly and painfully, we began writing a new one together. But just when I thought the worst was over, Daniel reached out to me a few times via text and phone call, but I never answered. He was a beautiful chapter, but not my entire story. This is why I wanted to cry, not because of the compliment itself. Something in Eric's phone made my blood run cold. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon when I was at home by myself, folding laundry once more. It's funny how life always comes back to that dull, repetitive rhythm, but in that instant, I felt better than I had in months, and perhaps things would work out. Eric had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he was humming a song in the shower. I picked it up to move it, not realizing that I wasn't snooping. The screen displayed Lindsay Therapist, but it wasn't a work message. Rather, it was a string of texts, and it wasn't what I had anticipated. "I appreciate how careful you have been and how easy you are to talk to. I never intended for it to go that far, and I miss our real sessions where it was just the two of us." The words sent shivers down my spine, and I sat down when my niece was unable to hold me any longer. My heart was racing as I scrolled slowly. Eric and I had been in therapy for 2 months. I thought the therapist was distant professional, but now I was realizing she had been distant with me and oddly familiar with him. One text from him stood out: "Jess is trying. I know she is, but I feel guilty every time I touch her now." That one shattered me, not because he still carried guilt, but because he had carried this secret. I had given up another man for our marriage. I had cut out Daniel like a tumor, painful but necessary. I let Eric back in, raw and vulnerable. And now this. I did not scream. I did not even cry. I just waited. I listened to the shower stop. I listened to the towel sliding off the rack. I listened to him walk barefoot into the room. He saw the phone in my hand and froze. I turned the screen to him. Was she a fair? He opened his mouth to speak and then closed it. His eyes darted, looking for a place to escape, but there was none. It was emotional. He finally whispered, "It was never physical. I swear, Jessica, I never touched her. But yes, it was something. It was during the time I said those words to you. I felt dead inside. She was just someone to talk to." I stared at him. "So while I was spiraling, While I was crumbling, you were confiding in someone else, someone who was supposed to help us." He stepped closer. "It ended the day we started therapy together. I swear she tried reaching out after, but I shut it down. That thread is old." My hands trembled. "Why did you not tell me?" "Because I thought I had no right to judge you," he said. "And honestly, I was scared. Scared that if I told you the truth, you would leave, and I deserved it." I sat in silence, letting those words sink in. So here we were, two broken people, guilty in different ways. I had turned to another man for comfort. He had turned to another woman for escape. The thing that struck me the most was that I understood him. I knew how easy it was to slip, to fall, to feel invisible, and to run to the first voice that made you feel seen. I didn't excuse him, but I understood him. Neither of us had remained pure, and neither of us could claim moral superiority. "I want to keep trying," I murmured quietly, "but no more lies." And he agreed, no more secrets. That night, we sat on the couch, both of us too exhausted to fight and too weak to go. From that day on, we resumed therapy with a new therapist, a man I chose, and Eric immediately agreed. Our sessions became more intense. There were weeks of arguments all the way home, but there were also tender little moments when we laughed, were touched, and made love again, as if we were two people rediscovering each other's wounds. "You are not invisible to me anymore," Eric said to me as he drew me into his chest across the bed one night. This time, I felt tears fall down my cheek, not from pain, but from hope. Healing didn't happen overnight. It never does. Instead, it started with honesty, accountability, and the bravery to forgive him even when it seemed impossible. Yes, I did forgive him because we deserved peace, not because he deserved it, but because I chose to stick by my family, even though it was easier to do otherwise. My name is Jessica, and I'm a woman who made mistakes, loved wrong, and was loved wrong, but I chose to fight for my family. And sometimes that fight is the most romantic thing of all. I appreciate you reading this story through to the end. If it moved you or even brought back memories, please share your thoughts in the comments section. Let's grow and learn together. And keep in mind that the stories here are for us mature minds that aren't afraid of the real, raw, and subsequent redemption.